The next thing we're going to do is we've created a songs document here. The next thing we want to do is create a sermon document. There's a couple different ways to do that, and what I'm going to suggest doing for creating sermons is one of two things. So we could go to search the library here and filter it down to sermon. I could go to this and duplicate it, or I could just rename this one for August 30th. In the instance of this, I'm actually going to get ahead of the game and create August 30th before the 23rd has happened. So I'm going to choose to duplicate it. Now, if this was, let's say, Tuesday, August 24th, I would just go in here, rename this, delete the slides I didn't need, and so on and so forth. But in this case, I'm going to just duplicate August 23rd and call it, August 30th. And then I'm going to go back to our playlist. I'm going to go to the sermon, and let's link sermon August 30th right there. If it didn't appear in this list, just a heads up, if it didn't appear for some reason, try again. I've had some weird issues with right after I duplicated and created something, it wouldn't actually show up in this list. So sometimes I'd gone in back into the library to make sure it was there and things like that. But for the most part, once you link it, once you create it, you can link it. It works just fine. So for sermons specifically, there's a few things we've got going on. The first of which is the name slide. So you could go into your weekend and look at the gathering leaders and see it's Speaker Bob Schwan. And we can go in here and rename it and run the chance of naming it or spelling something wrong. Or we could go back into our song library and search for names, or if you happen to know that names happens to be one of the first ones, I could come in here, Command-click this, Command-C to copy, and then jump back down to the sermon here that I've created under August 30th, and Command-V paste, and of course Command-click delete to delete it, and now that is set up correctly in this order. If I had additional slides I wanted to add, there's a few different ways to do that. What I usually start with is Command-click a blank slide and just duplicate it. What we like to do is we like to have a blank slide between each and every slide unless those slides were meant to go together. For instance, a scripture spanning multiple slides will be next to each other, but as soon as that ends, it'll go blank, which essentially takes it down so that it's no longer being output. So here I've got my name slide, and then I've got my blank slide, and then I've got my slide that I want to have for my first scripture reference. So now that I've got that, I'm going to right-click on it and choose Themes. Scripture and Text Lower Thirds. We're in our Wisdom series. It's a short scripture, so I'm going to use Wisdom Scripture. And that pops in all of the graphics that I need. I hit right-click and I hit Edit. And now I can edit this. Now, I want to show that when I created this, it put these text layers in, but it left a text box on the top. This might be confusing for most people, but if you see the word text floating up here outside of this, just grab this text box and hit delete, because you don't need it. All of the elements you need came in with the theme down here. So then we can go in and say, okay, we've got Peter 1 verse 2 through 7, and then we can paste Peter into here. Now, when you paste things, you want to use Command Option Shift V. So, for instance, if we look up 1 Peter 1 verse 2 through 7, let's just say we're doing ESV here. I'm just making this up. I have no idea what this actual thing is. So let's just say that, let's just say it was this first little bit here. Okay, I can copy that, Command-C. This is most likely going to come from their sermon notes that they've sent you. And then I'm going to come over here and Command Option Shift V. So I'm holding 4 letters, or 4 keyboard things at the same time here. 3 with one hand and then hitting V with the other. And now you can see that this is it's a pretty long thing. This short version is only set to use 2 slides, so we're going to create a new slide right after the right here, and all I have to do is hit Option and then Enter, which will end this one at the word the and create a new slide with the rest of it. Now, there might be some times where it's like, oh, I actually want the word the. Let's remove it from this one and put it over here so that that makes sense, the resurrection of the dead. We can certainly do that. Now, slide formatting and things like that, we're going to go into much more in-depth on that later with actual content from an actual sermon. But I wanted to show here just how you could quickly add a new slide. So let's say, okay, here's my first scripture. Now let's add another slide. I can go up here to this top bar right above in the edit view here and choose, I want a blank slide, and then I can choose, hey, I want a messages and scripture in lower thirds, and then I want a wisdom text, and then here's my profound thought number 1, blah. And I might choose to get that to stand out with our color palette for this sermon series, and there's my profound thought. Now, maybe that's all of the things I have, maybe it's not, but that is a quick way of doing that. So again, when you're in the edit mode, you can click the little plus slide up here. It'll put a new slide after whatever slide you have selected. So let's, again, add a blank slide, and then let's add scripture. Let's do a long one, and then maybe this is a long scripture. So now long scriptures have 3 lines, so that's lines 1, 2, and 3. The short one, like I used up here, just has lines 1 and 2. Does that make sense? So the long one under themes, wisdom scripture large, that's 3 lines. Wisdom scripture is just 2 lines. And then wisdom text is 2 lines and does not have this added little flag up here. So it just looks like this. So that's 2 lines. Does that make sense? So here we've got each of the different elements that we might have. All of the themes are going to be set up to be the colors that we want for that sermon series, and we will be off to the races from there. Okay, so this first slide will start and reset. We'll reset and start the stage timer here. It will also set the stage display, which is what this small little logo is, and it'll set the audience look for sermon. So we can edit any of those actions at any time, and then we can also add them. If they already are added, they'll be grayed out here, which means we have to go to Edit. Edit Stage Action. We have Sermon PCO, cool. And then Edit Action Audience Look. We've got Sermon Speaking, great. The timers are also in there. So this timer is going to reset, and then this timer is going to start. If I wanted to change the time of that timer, I would come up here to the timer 30 minute and adjust the time there. So let's say he's actually got 30 minutes. I'd hit reset and start on that. And I can also go over here and hit reset, which will start it. In the case of this weekend, we're actually doing 25 minutes for all of that. So we can do that. That's about all there is to see with sermon slides and things like that. Individual formatting choices, that's going to be a whole nother group of stuff we're going to have to go through. But I just wanted to show the mechanics of selecting things. Now, certainly if there was a full screen slide or a video, you could come in and let's just say we wanted for some reason to put the slide in here. We certainly could do that and create move around slides. Sometimes I duplicate these blank slides with just a command click and then a command C and V to get 2 of them. So if we wanted, for instance, to put a video in there, if we wanted to put this video in there, we could. So that's how you add full screen slides. You can, of course, command select and delete a whole bunch of stuff. So let's say this was a previous weekend, I just duplicated it. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of slides by command shift click, command delete, and it gets rid of all of them. So those are the quick little tips and tricks on how to create sermon slides in ProPresenter 7.